So what I will be talking today to you about is joint work with my colleague Alice de Séjourné, who is also here today. I'm representing VUB. I'm an assistant professor at VUB, and I'm also representing the MOBI, Electromobility Research Center today, where you can see that, one of our key themes is electric and autonomous vehicles. And the MOBI Electromobility Research Center is very interdisciplinary. So we work on a lot of the economic perspectives behind it, but we have over 100 researchers, and so there's quite some people working also on the engineering components, the battery innovation in terms of electric vehicles, e-powers, also the sustainable energy communities, and essentially the whole broad picture. Our lab is also growing. There's a lot of people from our AV lab here today. You probably also know Lieselot van Haverbeke, who is heading the electric and autonomous vehicle lab, and I myself am the team manager of the autonomous vehicle team. And so a lot of our researchers are working on very different aspects that I will also talk to you about today, so to give you a glimpse of what we do. And you can also see quite some European projects that we are involved in. I've listed some here. The Drive to the Future project is currently, has ended already, but so we are still involved in the SHOW project, which is quite well known. There's shuttles, robotaxis, actually all kinds of shared autonomous vehicles that are being deployed throughout Europe. And we have the advantage there that we can perform the impact assessment, which is really great. So we will be gathering a lot of data, a lot of user acceptance data, but also just vehicle data that we can then process and do an impact assessment on. So that is still coming. I cannot tell you what is ongoing there. Maybe just quickly also on what is our vision at MOBI and what do we research on, and I think it's very aligned with everything that we've heard today already. We also focus on shared autonomous vehicles because I don't have to repeat that a private autonomous vehicle will not solve any issues that we have today. And so that is also very much represented in all the research that we do. So if we look at our user acceptance studies that we have done in the past, we have focused very much as well on the typical autonomous shuttles that are being deployed in Europe. We had our own shuttle that was deployed in 2019. Already, so that was at our Brussels Health Campus. I don't know if you remember, maybe some of you have visited it at the time. Unfortunately, 2019 was a little bit of a bad timing because we had our technical test phase that was ongoing on the private terrain of the campus, and then right as we were moving to public terrain, that was in February 2020. And yes, we all know what happened then. So unfortunately, we had to stop our pilot as no passengers were allowed anymore. But we did collect quite some data from the first phase. So it was private terrain, but it was mixed though, in mixed traffic. There were other cars, there were pedestrians, there were cyclists. So we could see, what was the situation and how people were perceiving the vehicle, how passengers were perceiving. But also importantly is we looked at how non-passengers were perceiving the vehicle. So we surveyed people that were around the vehicle that just had an interaction with it, car users, but also just pedestrians that were walking around. And I will show you also a video, it's not the next slide, but the slide after that, of a follow-up study that we did in collaboration with Maria Medelaris in Ghent. So, as you know, they had the local motor shuttle there, so you will see the experiences of the passengers there. So that's one component of what we research. But we really put that, on the other side, we really want to look at now what is the business case and how can we bring this shuttle and this deployment, and it was something that was really also of interest to the Brussels Health Campus, because they wanted to know, well, is it interesting for us to deploy a shuttle like this? Can we, what kind of investment will we have to make? And then also on the longer term, will it be viable? And so our researcher then also looked at what is the costs. So the graph that you see here, you see the use case, And then she also talked to vehicle suppliers and so on, and looked at, you know, what are the best case, worst case cost categories. So a lot of cost categories were taken into account. And we saw at that point, so this goes back to 2019, but we did look at also the willingness to pay of the passengers, and that was still quite low at the time, so not yet worth the investment for the Brussels Health Campus. Two other research lines that I wanted to mention is our simulation model that is being developed by one of our researchers for the city of Brussels. So it's completely based on ubiquitous data, so which is just great. It gathers all the data sources that are just available and can, as such, be transferred to any city. And the idea is there to look at the impact on the congestion in Brussels when we try to replace the private cars by shared autonomous vehicles. So very inspiring also to hear the simulation study from Oslo that Lars was mentioning earlier. And so now we want to see what happens in Brussels when we do that. And then lastly, we have the big impact assessment that I already mentioned. So there's a lot of symbols and formulas on here. But essentially what we do in the impact assessment is we gather the perspectives from the stakeholders. So we travel to the local pilot sites and have stakeholder workshops to see what their perspectives are. And these perspectives are then combined with the data from the pilot sites throughout Europe. And so the idea is to then, so this is in collaboration with the SHOW project, the idea is to then see how can we bring all of this together and give insights on what the impact is that autonomous vehicles will bring, and hopefully also scale this up. Now, as I promised, I'm going back now to the user acceptance and the business case. So a short video to share with you that we made at the time in Ghent.
How does it know where to drive? I don't get it.
Dat is de toekomst, hè?
Dat is de toekomst, hè?
Ja.
C'est assez agréable parce que quand tu es dedans, tu as l'impression que tu es en vacances.
Ja, het rijdt goed. Het is kalm. Het rijdt niet te vlug.
No, as long as there is a button that can stop it if it's needed.
De eerste keer dat ik dat zie. Ik vind dat wel ideaal. Moderne tijden.
Ja, we kunnen een babbeltje doen en het is een beetje kermis ook, hè?
Ja,
dus, ja,
zeker.
Voilà.
So as you could see, it was actually a very interesting business case because the shuttle in Ghent was replacing a conventional van. And so a lot of people were actually used to using this conventional van at the time. And so the driver of the conventional van was also trained to be the safety operator of this autonomous shuttle. So they knew this person, they had a really, a big feeling of safety with him. And it was a lot of passengers were also people that would come to the hospital regularly. So they knew the service that existed at the time, and then it was replaced. So there was a real mobility need for them. It was also very interesting because it was a lot of older people. So those are usually not the ones that are using these new technologies. And so we could really see what they thought of the experience. And you saw that they were all very positive. Unfortunately, many of you know that Local Motors has defaulted, and so the shuttle is no longer driving there anymore. So it's too bad, because it was actually running quite well before that happened. Now, so overall, people were quite positive, but from this study, and even also from what we see now at the show pilots that is happening still today, there are challenges that we see. And I mean, a lot of these challenges were already mentioned today. There is, of course, the operational speed, not only for the passengers that it is a problem, but also for the vehicles behind. You know, they really are bothered by the fact that the shuttle drives so slow. And that's also what we saw, the findings from the surveys that we conducted, that it was mainly actually the other road users that were not happy with the shuttle. Then it comes to, well, what are the passengers not happy about? Well, that's mainly then the hard braking of the vehicle, which still happens also to this day. We hear also in the pilots in the show project, you know, vehicles still have to stop for falling leaves or things like that. And then, of course, it was mentioned a lot already today, the fact that there is still the safety operator and the fact that the trajectory is not flexible. That is sometimes, can be a difficulty. Now, we try to put that on the other side of that. What is then, let's say, currently the business models or the business cases that we see? This is still ongoing work, but we try to really look at all the different types of cost categories that we can take into account when we want to deploy a service. Our researcher really tries to go into, so this is a non-exhaustive list, by the way, but these are just some costs that we show here. And these are all very dependent on how many vehicles do you have, how fast will the vehicles go, what is the trajectory, what is going to be, the frequency. So, and based on all these different parameters, then we can see what will be the cost of deploying this service. Now, oops, my vehicle is driving away, but in any case, what I wanted to mention here is what we see now is the big cost factors are, of course, the fact that the trajectory is not very flexible at the time. We even had it happen in the UZ at the time that there was a road construction that was about to happen. And so then, the vehicle manufacturer or the mobility service provider had to come back to recalibrate the trajectory, so it's quite costly if something like that happens. And then one of the high costs is, of course, the safety operator, and can we switch to remote supervision? And that would save us a lot of money. And then my vehicle left, but there is the willingness to pay that is still quite low, we see today. Now, the two most, let's say, use cases that we see in Europe are, we can kind of distinguish between the public services and the private services, the ones that are ongoing now. Also, we kind of count our shuttle, because it never really went to public road, as a private service, and you can even see that we had to put lane markers there so that cars would not just park on the side of the road, and so otherwise the shuttle would be blocked all the time. So it's really important there that you think of what can go wrong on the trajectory. Now, what do we see in terms of these two services based on what we find in literature? Now, if you look at the public transport setting, for now, so the different pilot studies that we've seen, there's not a big interest if the trajectory becomes longer than 4 kilometers, and I think that makes sense in terms of the speed. And we also see that car drivers, people that use their car very often, are not easily persuaded to use a service like that, and we also see that the willingness to pay is quite low. On the other hand, what we see is that if we look at the more private setting shuttles, that they are, let's say, in a sense, more attractive. People are willing to pay more, and I think that's also what we see here. People are not rushed. They really have time to take the shuttle. They see it more as a techno-tourism as well, is what I heard the term today. So it makes more sense sometimes to deploy it in a setting. I guess makes more sense today to deploy it in a setting like this. Is what we find from the current deployments of the shuttle. I see my time is running out. So I guess that's perfect because I have one final slide. Now, we kind of try to sum it up like this. Now, how do we let the user and the supplier or the business case meet? And what is needed and what it would be nice. I feel, I've heard today a lot that people are saying, well, the technology is there and it's fine. But there are still quite some technological difficulties in the shuttles that are being deployed in Europe that we see today. I mean, the technology might be there, but it's not yet fully implemented, let's say, in those vehicles. And then there would be also quite substantial investments necessary at the time on private sites or subsidies, of course, on public terrain. We also believe that there should be a real mobility need, and that is also a finding that we had from our study in Ghent, and also what we see throughout the show project. And then an inclusive booking system is something that is coming up more and more because what will happen to people who are older and cannot use a smartphone? I mean, I think that is something that we really need to think about and consider at the time. And that was all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evie. Very interesting story, and I think the next speaker, Mario, can link to quite many of those user experience points, so that's already very interesting. But any questions for Evie about the business or user experience side? Maybe if nobody has one, I had one, about the willingness to pay. Have you found any links to the people's characteristics, like what people are more willing to pay, what people are less willing to pay?
Well, we do see that people who currently use public transport, they kind of see it more as an extension of their public transport use, and so they would be willing to pay, let's say, a supplement on top of their public transport subscription. But really the characteristics in terms of, you mean older people, and we haven't really looked into that yet, so we don't, It is something that we can also investigate because we're doing a literature review as well to see what has come out of those willingness to pay studies. So I think it would be interesting to see, in other sites what has been found. Yeah.
Absolutely. I see we have sparked a bit of debate.
Hi, Amy, thank you very much. Related to that question, maybe you know that this business model is not working, and the experience that you have. What kind of business model do you envision that can work or makes a chance to be successful, or is it just too early at this moment?
I think it's really difficult to say at this moment. If I had the answer, I think I would be a very rich person right now. So yeah, I don't know.
I see in the back. I've not been walking to the back enough, so I definitely want to give the back of the room also the opportunity for questions.
Hello, thank you. Geoffrey Bellavia, Proximus. Just a quick question. What actually happened with this vehicle that may not drive anymore?
Oh, you mean the vehicle in Ghent? Well, it's the company that defaulted. So that's why, the vehicle is no longer operational. Which is actually the vehicle, I was in it, and also I heard from the people who were involved in the project that the vehicle was performing quite well. So, yeah, it's purely because of the company defaulting.
They got bankrupt 1 week after they submitted a first prize offer for Terhills. Maybe because they had to work too much on that tender, I don't know.
No, just a question on this willingness to pay. I am quite surprised. Why would people wanted to pay more for an autonomous service?
Because they have a better reach, like, for example, to bridge the last mile. Because especially for people with limited mobility, people that can't walk so far, for them it's really important to have the last mile connection to, for example, the entrance of the hospital.
And in the business case, it's just, I'm a simple guy, I suppose, but when you don't have to look for drivers, pay for drivers, in the end, you will have a business case or not?
I mean, if you think of, a situation such as the hospital of Ghent, for example, they were not asking people to. It was a free service. So for them, it really was a service that they were giving. So even when there was a driver in the conventional van, they were not charging any price whatsoever. But and actually in Ghent, we only asked about the willingness to pay in the Jette campus. We didn't ask about the willingness to pay in Ghent because they wouldn't let us ask that question, because they said, well, if you ask the question, then everybody's going to be worried that the service will become pay. So yeah, we have no results from the Ghent service.
I think from a business perspective, it's also quite interesting, and that's also a discussion that we've been having here internally. That what are you comparing it with? Like the situation in Ghent, like they have a service with a driver, so they have a cost that is not covered, and they are looking for something else that might replace it. That will still come with a cost, but in that sense, it's acceptable that it's not like net cash positive.
Yeah.
We are a bit in the same situation here in the sense that our business case is also probably not going to be positive. So it will be a net investment from our side. But within the bigger picture, taking into account that we have a need for public transport in this site, that we have invested a lot in, from that perspective, we expect that the business case will be less negative in a way than a traditional service. So that is there are different viewpoints in that, and maybe it's a luxury if you don't really have to come above zero, because that might be a bit tricky today.
I guess that was also the perspective in Ghent, but then the idea was that they would have the shuttle for a longer time, and then of course it all went
horribly wrong. Yes. Maybe one final question, then we need to move on.
Thank you. Actually, it's not a question, maybe just a remark, because if we see the robotaxis in China, they do like around 15 trips for the moment per day. So it's not a huge business case for the moment. In Phoenix, the price is the same as for a taxi, and the same in San Francisco, actually. Wemo was saying they expect within a year to decrease this by half, so they would like to sell it at half the price of the taxi ride. And it's interesting, I think, in the analysis to see, okay, we have a public transport ticket costing 2-3 euros, we have the taxi costing maybe 15-20 euros, and there's something in between that would be this autonomous taxi, or I don't know. So there's really a question about those business cases, so I just wanted to mention that.